historically, the investments in international markets, whether they were equities investments or real estate investments, have relied on two main filters: sector screening and financial screening. The sector screening essentially aims to identify properties occupied by tenants who are in permissible activities. So, for example, it will immediately exclude properties occupied by conventional banks and other conventional financial institutions. But of course, there is no problem in owning a building owned by an Islamic bank, a kafil company, Sharia compliant asset manager. We exclude producers and distributors of non-halal goods in general, producers and distributors of weapons. This is obviously on ethical grounds. This is a very detailed and sophisticated area, which typically requires referring the matter to Sharia, the Sharia board. Biotech companies involved in the manipulation and cloning of human genome. It's a very specialized area, so it doesn't exclude all the biotech companies. We also typically exclude the full-service hotels purely because there is nothing wrong in a hotel. I mean, a hotel, you just rent the room. But if a hotel generates a lot of revenues from alcohol, which is typically done through bars, restaurants, and nightclubs, or maybe they have an integrated casinos, that's clearly an unacceptable form of properties to own. And of course, as I said, the full-fledged casinos and other gambling venues like the bingo halls, these are also excluded. Producers and distributors of tobacco products, and also this has been another big debate, the producers and screening of non-halal media. In the past, there was a blanket prohibition, for example, in owning a movie theater. Okay. But as you also know, over the last few years, even in Saudi Arabia, they have reopened the cinemas, because I mean, watching a movie per se is not a problem. The problem is the content of the movie. So again, this has become a very specialized area, which requires every time to refer the matter and the property to the Sharia board. And in general, as a portfolio manager, there is a constant dialogue every time a property is acquired with the Sharia board to ensure that, unless it's obvious that the property is being occupied by a tenant, like, I don't know, residential properties, for example, usually it's better to have a screening, a pre-vetting by the Sharia board. Now, there are properties that have mixed uses, or where the tenant is conducting, like, for example, supermarkets. The tenant is selling a variety of goods. Some are halal, some are non-halal. How do you select? I mean, it is a blank no, even if they have one bottle of alcohol on the shelf. So the answer is no. The Sharia scholars have allowed a screening process which looks at the revenues of the tenant, and the tenant will have to disclose the revenues. They normally do. And the measurement of the non-halal revenues, which are then purified from the income of the property. So let's assume that there is a tenant that has 1% non-halal revenues, that 10%, sorry, 1% of the revenues will be donated to charity. Now, the other important aspect of sector screening is about alcohol. I mean, alcohol, it's a very delicate subject. And when we have invested in, let's say, shopping centers or hotels or mixed-use properties in general, where there was a restaurant serving alcohol, we found that some scholars wanted to have a double layer of Sharia screening. So not only they looked at the income generated by those tenants, but also at the footprint. So ironically, you might have had a tower of 100 floors. At the bottom or at the top floor, there was one restaurant taking a whole floor. That was enough to invalidate the entire property. So vertical properties tend to have a big problem. The second layer of screening are financial screening. So the financial screen are actually quite simple when investing in real estate. Clearly, we cannot charge interest, and that typically has to do with the rental agreement. Sometimes the rental agreements of property which are purchased incorporate clauses which apply an interest for delayed payment of rents. That's clearly not acceptable. So if we have acquired the property with an existing tenancy agreement which contemplates the interest, we will go back to the tenant and we will, as part of the renegotiation, we will remove those clauses. If obviously we are building the property, we are the first to put the tenant in place, clearly that will not exist. That clause will not exist. The second is about paying interest. Typically, real estate involves the use of bank finance in order to enhance the returns. Clearly, we cannot use a conventional mortgage to buy a property. What we will be doing is to use an Islamic bank. These days, there are many Islamic banks, even conventional banks, as a matter of fact, that provide a Sharia compliance mode of financing from Murabahas, from Ijara, and it's possible to use this mode of financing. So, and the banks are actually quite sophisticated. The number of banks have built international capabilities. So even if they are based, say, in the Middle East, they are able to support the financing of UK properties. The other prohibition within the financial screening is to use a financial derivative. So why would you use a financial derivative in a property? Well, two reasons. If you are borrowing money and the bank is giving you a floating rate, you might want to fix it with an interest rate swap. If you are investing in a country which has a base currency different from your base currency, so for example, you are an Emirati, a Saudi investors investing in Europe, then there is you will be subject to the volatility of the exchange rate. So you might want to use a forward exchange contract to protect yourself from that volatility. Now, we cannot use, as Islamic investors, the conventional financial derivatives, but again, as I said, Islamic banks have developed products for their corporate clients to protect them from these financial risks, and we will use these solutions offered by the Islamic banks. Now the market has developed over the last 20 years, and when it comes to hedging, not speculation, but hedging financial risks, there is a full suite of products to address those needs.